My bride replaced me with her ex during her vows, so I pulled out my phone, played the cheating videos, and walked out mid-ceremony. A 28-year-old guy. And I thought I'd found the woman I wanted to spend my life with. Emma wasn't just my fiancée. She was the kind of person who could light up a room without even trying. The kind of person who made me laugh so hard I forgot how bad my day had been. I remember the first time we met at that little coffee shop downtown. Her smile was like sunshine breaking through a storm, and I was hooked. Over the next few years, our connection only grew. We spent weekends exploring the city, cooking ridiculous dinners in our tiny apartment, and staying up late talking about everything from travel plans to the silliest dreams we had as kids. She became my world, and I thought I was hers. When she said yes, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Planning the wedding was surreal, visiting venues that smelled of fresh flowers, tasting cakes that melted perfectly in your mouth, and arguing over napkin colors like it was the most important decision in the universe. Every family member, every friend, had something nice to say about us. "You two are perfect together," my mom said during one of our dinner meetings. And even my friends gushed like I'd never heard them gush before. Everyone seemed so genuinely happy for us, and that made me feel invincible. There were little things I noticed late night, texts that she'd quickly hide when I walked in. Her phone always locked with a code she never shared, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Wedding planning was stressful. I told myself she was just nervous. I chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters, to the excitement, to the weight of committing your life to someone. I wanted to believe in her completely because love, I thought, was about trust. Every morning I woke up thinking, today is the day I get to marry the love of my life, and every night I went to bed with that same warm, hopeful thought. I never could have imagined that behind those charming smiles and shared dreams, something darker was quietly brewing. And that's when the first crack in my perfect world started to appear, tiny, almost invisible, but growing. The week leading up to the wedding felt like living in a dream I didn't want to wake up from. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought everything was perfect. Tima and I were finally stepping into the life we'd been talking about for years. Dress fittings, floral arrangements, seating charts, and cake tastings filled every waking hour. And somehow, through all the chaos, Emma seemed effortlessly radiant. I remember walking into the bridal boutique, seeing her in that flowing gown for the first time, and feeling my heart stop. She looked like a goddess, and I thought, this is it. This is the moment that will last forever. But even amidst the magic, small things gnawed at me. Emma became unusually defensive when I asked about little details, her sudden insistence on handling this herself, or brushing off questions about who she was texting. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at her phone with this strange intensity, and when I'd glance over, she'd quickly lock it or pretend to be scrolling aimlessly. I asked once, "Everything okay?" And she laughed just a little too sharp, saying, "Just stressed, babe. You know how it is." I nodded and let it slide because I wanted to believe her. I wanted everything to be perfect. Friends kept messaging me about how cute we were, how flawless the engagement pictures had turned out, how everyone was counting down the days. Even my parents couldn't stop talking about how proud they were, and seeing Emma smile at all the compliments made me feel like nothing could go wrong. I kept telling myself that the little oddities were normal, that everyone has wedding jitters. That love was about trust, and I trusted her completely, but there were moments that made my stomach twist. Like the night before the rehearsal, when I noticed her phone buzzing repeatedly in the corner of the room while she pretended to be picking out centerpieces. Or when a friend jokingly mentioned seeing Emma out at dinner alone with someone else a few nights prior. Emma laughed it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. My mind kept circling, asking questions I didn't want answers to, and yet I brushed it off. I told myself that love was about ignoring the small uneasiness, focusing on the bigger picture. After all, tomorrow, I would be marrying the woman of my dreams. So I thought. But deep down, there was a flicker of tension I couldn't shake. A whisper that maybe, just maybe, not everything was as it seemed. I'm a 28-year-old guy. And on the night before the wedding, I felt this strange mix of excitement and unease that I couldn't shake. Emma was unusually quiet, tapping her fingers on the edge of the hotel table while I unpacked my suit. Usually, she'd be laughing at some joke I made or teasing me about my tie. But that night, there was a distance I hadn't seen before. I asked her, "Hey, you okay?" And she just smiled faintly. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just nerves, I guess." But it wasn't nerves. I could feel it in my gut, that tension that didn't belong. I noticed small, off things, the way she kept checking her phone under the table, the hurried whispers that ended when I looked up, even the way she avoided eye contact when I mentioned tomorrow. Once a message popped up on her screen before she locked it with a swipe so quick I almost saw it. My heart sank in a way I didn't understand, and I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. Weddings were stressful, I told myself. That had to be it. We walked through the rehearsal together, and friends and family laughed, clinking glasses and sharing inside jokes about the ceremony. Emma's laughter sounded hollow to me, and the warmth I usually felt from her presence was replaced with this cold, uncomfortable energy. I tried to focus on the little things I loved, the way she brushed her hair back, the sparkle in her eyes, but even those gestures felt forced, rehearsed, like she was performing. Later, when we sat alone on the balcony, the city lights twinkling around us, I tried to hold her hand. She let me, but only briefly, and then pulled away with a polite smile. "I'll be fine," she said softly, but there was a tremor in her voice that I couldn't ignore. My mind raced through every text, every secretive glance, every unexplained phone call. Something wasn't right, but I wanted to believe it was just pre-wedding jitters. And yet, as I watched her walk away to check on the final wedding arrangements, I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to dismiss it, to cling to hope, but the unease had grown too strong. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but I could feel it in every corner of the hotel room, in every shadow that flickered against the walls. Tomorrow, everything would change, and I had no idea how badly. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and standing there in my tuxedo, waiting at the altar, I felt a mix of nervous excitement and a strange tension in my chest. The hall smelled of fresh roses, candles flickered softly, and the soft hum of the piano playing in the background made my heart race. Guests murmured quietly, smiling, taking photos, and I kept glancing toward the entrance, my eyes searching for Emma. I imagined seeing her smile, her eyes lighting up as she walked down the aisle, and the thought made my stomach flip with joy. When she appeared, walking slowly toward me, it should have been a perfect moment. She looked stunning, her hair glinting in the light, her dress flowing elegantly with every step. My chest swelled as I watched her approach, feeling the culmination of years of love and planning in that single, quiet moment. People were whispering, smiling, taking it all in, and I thought, this is it. This is everything I've ever wanted. But there was something off. Her gaze wasn't focused on me. It flickered over the crowd, then dropped to the floor, then back to me, but never lingered the way it always had. Her hands trembled ever so slightly as she held her bouquet, and she breathed in a way that sounded nervous, almost unnatural. I wanted to ignore it, to chalk it up to nerves, but a cold knot formed in my stomach. The officiant began the ceremony, greeting everyone with warmth, and then it was time for the vows. Emma cleared her throat, and as she began speaking, my mind raced with anticipation, picturing the words we had practiced together, the promises of love, of forever. My heart was pounding, a strange mix of elation and a creeping, inexplicable dread. And then the first word slipped out, and it wasn't quite what I expected. There was a hesitation, a subtle shift in tone, A way she said you that didn't feel like it was meant for me. My chest tightened and I froze, heart hammering. Because something in that moment whispered that everything I thought I knew about this day was about to unravel completely. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I'll never forget the moment my entire world collapsed in front of everyone I loved. Emma began reciting her vows, but as the words tumbled out, something felt wrong. The promises she spoke, the way she whispered certain phrases, the little glances she threw it, wasn't meant for me. My stomach sank as I noticed the subtle familiarity in her tone, the intimate words that seemed directed at someone else entirely. My mind screamed, no, this can't be happening, but my eyes betrayed me. Catching the small smirk of someone seated at the front, her ex. The crowd hadn't noticed yet. They were still smiling, holding cameras, thinking it was just a touching moment. But I could feel the shift, the tension in the air. The way a few people had paused mid-clap, exchanging uncertain glances. My throat went dry, and I couldn't look away. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she clutched the bouquet, her lips parting to speak the words she shouldn't have. Words that pierced through the wedding hall like knives. I wanted to step forward, to interrupt, to shout, but my body froze. Every memory of late-night texts, secretive phone calls, and tiny lies I had brushed off suddenly slammed into me like a freight train. You're the one who taught me what real love feels like, she said, and my blood ran cold. She wasn't talking to me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, a mixture of disbelief, rage, and heartbreak twisting together. The officiant paused mid-sentence, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, and the guests' murmurs grew louder. I could feel all eyes subtly turning toward us, as if something invisible had snapped. Emma's ex sat there, a small, smug smile forming as if he'd won some cruel, twisted game. The betrayal was undeniable, public, and humiliating. And I realized in that instant that this wasn't just about a moment, it was about every trust. Every plan, every dream I'd shared with her. I clenched my fists, trying to control the shaking in my body, trying to breathe through the storm of emotion building inside me. And yet, even as the shock coursed through me, a part of me began plotting. A spark of something that would change everything about this wedding forever. Because if she thought she could humiliate me, she had no idea what was coming next. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I'll never forget the moment my entire world collapsed in front of everyone I loved. Emma began reciting her vows, but as the words tumbled out, something felt wrong. The promises she spoke, the way she whispered certain phrases, the little glances she threw, it wasn't meant for me. My stomach sank as I noticed the subtle familiarity in her tone, the intimate words that seemed directed at someone else entirely. My mind screamed, no, this can't be happening, but my eyes betrayed me. Catching the small smirk of someone seated at the front, her ex. The crowd hadn't noticed yet. They were still smiling, holding cameras, thinking it was just a touching moment. But I could feel the shift, the tension in the air. The way a few people had paused mid-clap, exchanging uncertain glances. My throat went dry, and I couldn't look away. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she clutched the bouquet, her lips parting to speak the words she shouldn't have. Words that pierced through the wedding hall like knives. I wanted to step forward, to interrupt, to shout, but my body froze. Every memory of late-night texts, secretive phone calls, and tiny lies I had brushed off suddenly slammed into me like a freight train. You're the one who taught me what real love feels like, she said, and my blood ran cold. She wasn't talking to me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, a mixture of disbelief, rage, and heartbreak twisting together. The officiant paused mid-sentence, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, and the guests' murmurs grew louder. I could feel all eyes subtly turning toward us, as if something invisible had snapped. Emma's ex sat there, a small, smug smile forming as if he'd won some cruel, twisted game. The betrayal was undeniable, public, and humiliating. And I realized in that instant that this wasn't just about a moment, it was about every trust. Every plan, every dream I'd shared with her. I clenched my fists, trying to control the shaking in my body, trying to breathe through the storm of emotion building inside me. And yet, even as the shock coursed through me, a part of me began plotting. A spark of something that would change everything about this wedding forever. Because if she thought she could humiliate me, she had no idea what was coming next. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and as the videos played, the room erupted into chaos. Gasps echoed from every corner, chairs scraped against the floor, and whispered conversations turned into shocked murmurs that spread like wildfire. Emma's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. I could see her ex, in the front row, stiffen, his smugness fading into panic as the undeniable truth unfolded for everyone to witness. The warmth and anticipation of a wedding had vanished, replaced with tension so thick you could almost touch it. Guests turned their heads, some whispering to each other, some pulling out phones to capture the scene. My parents' faces were a mixture of shock, hurt, and confusion. My friends' mouths hung open, unable to form words. Emma's closest friends looked between her and me, the betrayal hitting them too, a shared sense of disbelief etched across their expressions. The officiant, usually calm and poised, paused mid-ceremony, clearly unsure whether to continue or intervene. Emma's hand shook, and she whispered, "Please, stop," but no one moved toward her. Every frame of her deception was there for all to see. The nights she swore were spent at work. The late texts she said were nothing, the stolen kisses and secret meetings with her ex. My stomach churned with a mix of vindication and lingering heartbreak. The pain of betrayal was still there, but now it was mingled with a sharp sense of power. I kept my eyes on her, my expression calm, almost eerily composed. "It's all here," I said quietly, more to myself than anyone else, letting the weight of the evidence speak louder than words. I could feel the shift in energy. This was no longer my humiliation, it was hers. And as Emma's face contorted with panic and shame, I realized this public exposure had done more than reveal the truth, had changed the entire dynamic of the day. And nothing would ever be the same. Even as the chaos swirled around me, one thought lingered: the worst was yet to come. And I was ready for Eom, a 28-year-old guy. And even though I had exposed her betrayal, a crushing wave of emptiness hit me that I hadn't expected. Standing there at the altar, surrounded by shocked faces, I realized that no amount of evidence or revenge could erase the love I had invested in Emma. Every joke we'd shared, every late-night conversation, every plan for the future felt like it had been carved out of my life and handed to someone else. My chest tightened, my throat burned, and for the first time all day, I felt truly powerless, not to her, but to the heartbreak that clawed at me from the inside. Emma's pleading words floated toward me, soft and desperate. I can explain. Please, don't do this." But they hit me like nails on a chalkboard. I wanted to scream, to yell, to shake her, but my voice faltered. I could feel tears threatening to fall, blurring my vision as my mind replayed months of lies and stolen trust. The crowd had turned into a blur, faces full of sympathy, curiosity, judgment, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was the ache in my chest and the realization that the person I thought I could trust above all else had shattered my world. I thought back to the life we had envisioned, the home we'd picked, the honeymoon we'd planned, the laughter and love that had filled our small apartment. It all felt like a cruel joke now, an illusion stripped away in front of everyone I cared about. For a moment, I questioned myself, wondering if I'd been too naive, too trusting, too blind. Maybe I had ignored the signs. Maybe I had been too eager to believe in her perfection, and yet, beneath the suffocating grief, a tiny ember of clarity sparked. This was the lowest I'd ever felt, but even in this darkness, I realized something important. I could walk away. I didn't have to let her betrayal define me. My hands still shook. My heart still ached. But somewhere in the storm of humiliation and heartbreak, I felt the faintest hint of empowerment building. I took a deep breath, readying myself for what I had to do next, but little did Emma know. I wasn't done yet. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and after the whirlwind of betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak, I made a decision that surprised even me. I reached into my pocket, turned off the phone, and straightened my shoulders. The panic in Emma's eyes and the murmurs of the guests couldn't shake my resolve. I realized that yelling, lashing out, or letting anger dictate my actions wouldn't give me the closure I needed. Walking away on my own terms would. I took a slow step forward, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. Emma stumbled, reaching toward me, her voice breaking. "Wait, please don't," but I kept walking. The soft rustle of the wedding dress behind me, the stunned silence of the crowd, and the faint smell of roses in the air only amplified the surrealness of the moment. I could hear whispers, a mix of shock and admiration, as I passed families, friends, and strangers who had all gathered to celebrate what they thought was a perfect union. Outside, the air hit me like a wave, cool, sharp, and cleansing. I inhaled deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in weeks. My heart was still heavy, the ache of betrayal lingering, but it was no longer paralyzing. Every step away from the altar felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, as if each footfall was erasing the humiliation Emma had tried to impose. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The scene inside the shattered bride, the stunned ex, the murmuring crowd was a story that would unfold without my participation. I had taken control in the only way that mattered, by refusing to let her actions define me. For the first time that day, I felt clarity. And yet, even as the cool evening air brushed my face, a flicker of tension remained. Emma wasn't finished, and part of me knew the fallout would follow me far beyond the doors of that church. But in that moment, walking alone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: power, agency, and the quiet thrill of taking the high road when everyone expected me to crumble. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and stepping out into the quiet night after walking away from my own wedding felt surreal. The chaos inside, the gasps, whispers, and the stunned silence of friends and family was still echoing in my mind. But outside, there was only the cool air and the faint hum of the city streets. I realized how much control had shifted that day. The betrayal had been laid bare for everyone to see, but I was no longer the victim in the story. For the first time, I felt like the person holding the narrative. Messages and calls started flooding in almost immediately. My parents were bewildered, some angry, others silently supportive. Friends who had been close to Emma were caught between loyalty and shock, and even strangers who witnessed snippets of the scene online started reaching out, expressing disbelief and sympathy. Everywhere I looked online, Emma's image was unraveling, her carefully constructed facade shattered. It was strange seeing someone so manipulative finally face the consequences in real time. Yet part of me still felt the ache of what I had lost. I spent the evening wondering, reflecting on everything: the love I had poured into a person who didn't deserve it, the trust I had freely given, and the humiliation I had narrowly avoided by staying calm and deliberate. Social media had exploded, and while part of me shied away from the public attention, another part felt satisfaction knowing the truth was out there. Emma's ex, who had seemed untouchable in the background, was now exposed as well, his smugness replaced with fear and regret. Even as the adrenaline faded, I could feel the emotional weight of the day pressing down. It wasn't just a wedding that had collapsed. It was a relationship built on lies, dreams that would never materialize, and the painful realization that people you love most can hurt you in ways you never imagined. Yet somewhere beneath the heartbreak, I felt a quiet resolve forming. The world had witnessed their betrayal, but my life wasn't over. And though I still felt raw, I knew this was the turning point, the moment where I could finally begin reclaiming my life on my own terms. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and in the days after the wedding disaster, I felt like I was walking through a haze. The initial shock had faded, but the heartbreak lingered, stubborn and heavy. I kept replaying every moment with Emma, the laughter, the plans, the dreams we'd share. Down every memory now carried a bitter edge. Therapy became my lifeline, a place where I could pour everything out without judgment, untangle the confusion, and begin understanding the betrayal. Friends checked in, offering support, listening as I recounted the events, their sympathy helping to patch the raw edges of my pain. I had to confront the fact that I had been blindsided by someone I trusted completely. My mind wrestled with anger, sadness, and disbelief all at once. I asked myself countless times how I could have missed the signs, the secretive texts, the distant behavior, the tiny inconsistencies I had rationalized away. But eventually, I realized that blaming myself wouldn't heal anything. Acceptance, as painful as it was, became the first step toward regaining control over my life. Rebuilding my sense of trust was harder than I imagined. Even small interactions with people felt weighted, the fear of betrayal lurking in the back of my mind. But each day I pushed a little further, reminded myself of my self-worth, and refused to let Emma's lies define who I was. Conversations with close friends became a mix of laughter and reflection, slowly helping me process the heartbreak while reclaiming my agency. And somewhere in the midst of the pain, I began to see it, a glimmer of empowerment. The humiliation she tried to inflict didn't stick. I had chosen my path, maintained my dignity, and survived the public exposure with my self-respect intact. The heartbreak was still there, but it no longer had the power to control me. And as I looked ahead, I realized that the life I thought had ended that day was just beginning again, stronger, wiser, and entirely my own. Even so, the final step, the closure I craved, was still waiting for me, a 28-year-old guy. And by the time the dust settled, I finally understood something crucial. My life didn't end with her betrayal, it began anew. I had walked away from humiliation, reclaimed my dignity, and confronted the truth head-on. Emma and her ex faded from my daily reality, reduced to cautionary tales and lessons in trust. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my chest, replaced with clarity, strength, and the quiet thrill of taking control over my own story. The aftermath was still messy. Some friends distanced themselves, unsure how to navigate the scandal. Family members asked questions I didn't always answer, but I didn't feel pressured to explain myself. My focus shifted inward to rebuilding confidence, restoring trust in myself, and reclaiming the future I'd almost surrendered to someone unworthy. Therapy sessions, long walks, and quiet mornings alone became rituals of healing, each one reinforcing the lesson that my worth was never tied to someone else's deceit. I reflected often on how close I had come to being defined by her lies, how nearly every dream we'd shared had been built on sand. And yet, the very act of walking away, of refusing to crumble under betrayal, had transformed me. I realized I could set boundaries, demand honesty, and never again let someone manipulate my trust. There was no triumphant revenge, no dramatic confrontation beyond the exposure of the truth, but in that restraint lay the true victory. Weeks later, I found myself laughing genuinely at small things, enjoying moments I had forgotten in the shadow of heartbreak. Friends noticed the shift, commenting on how calm, grounded, and unshakable I had become. And I knew it was real this time, not borrowed happiness, not temporary relief, but a lasting sense of empowerment. The wedding that had been stolen from me didn't define my story. My choices, my resilience, and my self-respect did. And as I closed that chapter for good, I felt a deep, satisfying sense of closure. Emma's betrayal had hurt. Yes, but it had also taught me the most valuable lesson of all. The only person who can truly control my life, my heart, and my happiness is me.